The long-in-gestation Hellraiser remake is moving full steam ahead, and now we have learned who will be following in the footsteps of Doug Bradley's Pinhead, namely one Jaime Clayton. Now, some may be tempted to think that Hellraiser is taking gender-bending cues from Paul Feig's Ghostbusters and Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who, but in the particular case of Hellraiser, there may be more to it. In this editorial, I will give a brief introduction of the new Pinhead, detail why this gender swap shouldn't be quite as egregious as others we've seen, and finally go through what else is known about the movie at this stage. It has now been officially announced that the new Pinhead, or Hell Priest as it were, will be Jaime Clayton of Sense8 fame. For those who may be unfamiliar with that, let's do a brief introduction. Jaime Clayton first entered the public scene in 2010 as a makeup artist and co-host on VH1's Transform Me, a makeover show in which a female contestant was given a makeover by a team of 3 trans women stylists, one of which would be Jaime Clayton. And yes, the implication of that would be that Jaime Clayton was, let's see if I can get the accepted jargon within the field right here, was assigned male at birth, only to fully transition to female in 2003. Since VH1's Transform Me, Clayton has also appeared in, among other things, HBO's Hung, The Neon Demon, Designated Survivor, The L Word Generation Q, and the documentary Disclosure: Trans Lives on Screen. This casting choice may not go down all that well with those who might be inclined to believe that Pinhead is being gender-bent for ideopolitical purposes, or with Hellraiser fans who are familiar with the movies first, and who therefore are of the opinion that none but Doug Bradley can be Pinhead, period. However, there's a larger context here, which in this particular instance renders both of those complaints moot, although I do understand why many would feel that way. I mean, Amazon recently got ratioed to oblivion when they asked which franchise should get a female-centric makeover next. And it was the Doug Bradley incarnation of the character which made Pinhead iconic in the first place. Or more accurately, it was his incarnation of the character that came to colloquially be known as Pinhead. Despite only having a bit part in the original movie, he made the poster because the studio realized that in the pairing of that actor with that makeup, lightning struck and magic happened. And that, in turn, pushed the sequels in a very different direction from the one Clive Barker himself wanted and had planned for. The point I'm stressing here is that of Clive Barker's original vision. Not the one seen in the original movie, where compromises had to be made and studio notes had to be taken on board, but the one which came unfiltered from his imagination, namely, Clive Barker's novelette The Hellbound Heart, on which the movie is based. This reboot promises to be a new take on The Hellbound Heart, and that being the case, Jaime Clayton could very well be the perfect pick for the role. In The Hellbound Heart, the 4 Cenobites in the story are seen and described through the eyes of Frank, and initially, he can't make out their gender. They're that sexless and androgynous. Of these 4 equally difficult to gender Cenobites, the lead Cenobite is described as having each inch of its head tattooed in an intricate grid, and at every intersection of horizontal and vertical lines, a jeweled pin was driven through to the bone, and the tongue was similarly decorated. This character's voice is described as light and breathy, the voice of an excited girl. Later on, another one of these 4 sexless and androgynous Cenobites exposes herself to Frank, revealing that she, at the very least, was indeed female, and that by implication, the other 3 most likely were as well. In other words, as originally envisioned by Clive Barker, the lead Cenobite, the one with pins in the head and with the voice of an excited girl, probably was an androgynous female. Between the 4 actors to have taken on the lead Cenobite thus far, Doug Bradley, Stephen Smith Collins, Paul T. Taylor, and now Jaime Clayton. It is actually Jaime Clayton who is by far the closest to what Clive Barker originally envisioned in The Hellbound Heart. For this total reboot, that is worth keeping in mind. Doug Bradley is the original cinematic Pinhead of the original Hellraiser, and nothing can take away from that. But for what this particular movie is trying to do, Jaime Clayton just may be a better fit. Of course, there are others involved here too. The movie is directed by David Bruckner, and that has me excited. He directed the Amateur Night segment of the original found footage anthology VHS, and that one segment is arguably the highlight of the entire VHS franchise. It even got a spin-off feature film, which unfortunately didn't hold up to Bruckner's original short. He also directed The Ritual, which I consider to be one of the best horror movies of the past decade, as well as the recently released The Night House, which I have not yet seen, but I've been hearing good things. What has me worried though is the involvement of David S. Goyer. He is given story credit, which means that he came up with a new story inspired by Clive Barker's The Hellbound Heart, and that is what David Bruckner will be bringing to life on screen. He is given story credit, which means that he came up with a new story inspired by Clive Barker's The Hellbound Heart, and that is what David Bruckner will be bringing to life on screen. The reason that has me worried is that Goyer is extremely hit or miss, and mostly miss, unless he's working with really competent storytellers. Case in point, when given story pointers by Christopher Nolan, Goyer wrote Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. When left to his own devices, Goyer made Blade Trinity. Hopefully then, Goyer will have gotten some notes by Clive Barker himself. You see, Clive Barker is in the process of reacquiring domestic Hellraiser rights, so to avoid any issues, this production got him aboard and made him serve as executive producer. That doesn't mean he did any writing on it himself, but it does mean that he had the opportunity to provide notes and to say yay or nay on key decisions. So hopefully, and fingers crossed here, what we will be getting is something fairly close to what Barker originally envisioned. If not, what's the point of this alternate retelling? We do have the original. Filming has already concluded in Serbia, and the rest of the cast includes Odessa Azion, as well as, among others, Brandon Flid, Hayam Abbas, and Goran Visnic, in others as of yet undisclosed roles. The casting of the latter in particular gives me hope that at least part of the movie will take place in Serbia, as Goran Visnic is from Croatia, and both nations were part of the former Republic of Yugoslavia. Alas, there will be no theatrical release, as the movie will be dropped straight to Hulu. We'll keep you up to date as we learn more, so hit subscribe so you don't miss out. Till then, check out our earlier extensive Hellraiser coverage with Gary J. Tunnicliffe, including exactly what transpired the 2 earlier times the Pinhead role was recast. Links for that are in the description. Now, what do you make of all of this? Let me know in the comments.